Hey YouTube, I wanted to make a little video on making this little display base for my Zombicide zombie minis. A lot of times my friends want to see the miniatures that I paint, but they are not game players and they're just interested, and I like to just present them in a way that kind of gives the idea of what's going on in the scene. So sometimes I make up these little bases. Here's one that is a street scene. It's definitely out of proportion, but you know you have the idea that there's a sidewalk here and a street here, and I can place 2 or even 3 zombies on this without their base that comes with them, and it actually looks pretty cool. So we're going to do a little video on how to actually create this vase using the Vallejo black lava paste. I'm also going to show you how you can add the sandy paste to make the effect on the sidewalk. But these pastes are really cool. They're really easy to use, a lot easier than using PVA and glue. You can move them around, you can actually layer it. Here's an example of the black lava paste layered up higher with rocks, and I've added some pigments to create that look of the lava coming up out of the rock. But this video we're going to focus on this base here. So let's get started. Here's some of the things that I used to create this base effect. First off, I have this painter's masking tape, 2 different sizes. I used this artist spatula to spread the paste on it. It created a really nice effect when I just spread it real evenly. I used Vallejo model color paints. I have 2 grays here, yellow and black. The 2 grays are a foreground and a background color. I used both the black lava and sandy paste. A couple things I'd like to note here is the paste itself took about an hour to dry, and it looks like you can add pigments to the sandy paste, although I had a couple other projects that I was working on, so I went ahead and just purchased black. But I think you could probably add pigments to this to create maybe some browns or some greens if you wanted to. First thing we're going to do is we have to put down the yellow for the white stripes. I'm going to use Vallejo model color deep yellow, and I'm not going to put any water in it or even just any thinner, because I'm using this cork base, and this is pretty porous, so I'm just going to go ahead and paint this on and put a pretty thick coat here. So that looks about right. Okay, so I've added a second layer of yellow paint just to make it brighter. And the next step we're going to do is we're going to be adding the masking tape to the areas that we want maxed off for the different colors. So the first area we're going to mask off is that edge right beside the sidewalk here. And that will create a really clean line between the street and the sidewalk curb. Right there, that real clean line there. The next place we're going to mask off is we're going to mask off for the pinstripe, or actually I should say the street lines. Easiest way to do that is just take a ruler, and I believe I used about 2 centimeters was my first line, and so we will lay this out the same. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually mask off this whole area here, all of it, because I'm going to first put the stone paste, I should say the sandy paste, I'm going to go ahead and put up here first. Okay, so I've lightly masked off this actually entire lower half, and that's just because this sandy paste can get really a little messy. So I just don't want to get any paste other than basically from here over to the edge. Okay, so I'm using my little artist spatula, and I've got my sandy paste, and I'm just gonna slather it on. There, nice clean surface. So it's been a few minutes, and I want to make sure that you got to see one of the effects I added here. So on the sidewalk here, we have these lines that are kind of grooves, just for the different slabs of concrete. And so I want to go ahead and put those in there, but if you do it right after you've applied the paste is still kind of, it's got the viscosity is kind of liquidy still. So if you wait a few minutes, the paste starts to set up a little, and you can actually carve these lines in here a little bit easier, and it stays. The edges seem to stay. So I'm going to use this this little paint stir that I have, just because it has a nice squared, clean edge, and I'm going to do my best to try to get those lines in there. Let's see, I can use my model here for reference. So it looks like I have, and basically it's just when it dries, it's going to have that little indentation that I can fill in with either paint or pigment, and it's gonna look like there's sidewalk edges or slabs. Okay, so this is dried for, it's probably been about 20 minutes. Right now it's about 110 degrees outside, so I just set it in the sun for a while, and it's a little not quite dry, but I'm going to move on just for time's sake. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and apply the black lava paste to the areas, to these areas right here. So I'm going to take off my masking tape very carefully, and I'm just going to be careful going on this edge that I don't go into the side of the sidewalk there. Now this paste is a lot, well, I wouldn't say a lot, but it's thicker than the sandy paste, and I don't know if that is actually meant to be that way. But it's definitely thicker. And there it is. One thing I want to point out is that because the paste is so uniform in its texture, it's easy to just, easily spread. If I had pieces that were larger in size, pieces of sand that are different sizes, when you went to spread, it wouldn't go evenly because you would drag against the different sizes pieces of sand or grit. But because this is so even, it's really easy to spread. We're going to let that dry for a few minutes. Okay, so it's been about maybe 5 minutes or so, and I want to do this before it completely dries, because when I peel back the tape to reveal the yellow as well as this sidewalk, I want the paste to still actually have some give to it so that it'll tear cleanly. So we're going to do the front two stripes first, and then we'll do the sidewalk piece second. So basically we're just going to pull up, make sure I get this in the camera frame, and very easily just pull up the tape to reveal the yellow underneath. And oop, here comes the other one. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that back as well. And hopefully I'm not This is where we take the time to kind of clean up that edge so that it matches the rest. Next piece we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and remove this as well. There we go. And we're going to let that dry for a while. Okay, so what I've done is I went ahead and I gave it a base coat of the these two grays, the sky gray and B-salt gray. I kind of mixed them together to kind of create this color, and that's kind of my base coat. And then to create this kind of sidewalky look, we're going to go ahead and use some Vallejo pigments. I'm going to be using this one, dark slate gray, it looks like. Yeah. And we're going to use alcohol to set it. So that's how I'm going to do that. And so you just get a little bit of the pigment in the brush, and we're gonna use it dry. We're not gonna you can wet it, but I kind of like this the way it looks with a dry. This is super messy, and if this was lighter over here, I probably would go ahead and cover it up with something, but we're just gonna go ahead and okay, so we went ahead and we finished with the pigment, and we went ahead and set it with the alcohol. It can still see the alcohol still a little bit wet, so I'm going to wait for that to dry, but I'm just going to do the edge here now with the pigment. We're going to go ahead and set this as well. It's easy enough. You just dab a little bit of the alcohol, and you can use water to set it, but water has a tendency to take a long time to dry, where this is 99% alcohol, so it's drying really quickly. And as you can see on this side now, the top here is completely dry, and I'm just kind of waiting for that corner to dry. It's set in there. So once that's dry, then I can go ahead and go over it with a varnish, and then we can work on setting some of the highlights. Well, I've let it dry, and I went ahead and put a real quick coat of varnish on it. I didn't feel like pulling out my airbrush just for something so small, so I used some just some dual coat, and so it's ready to get. I'm going to do a little bit of a wash, and then I'm going to do a highlight. So first we're going to do the wash, and so basically we're just going to take our Vallejo, what's this, sky gray, and we're going to just create a real thin wash. Step, we're going to do dry brush, and just like any other kind of dry brush, you're going to want to make sure your paint's not diluted. We have 2 street scenes for zombies.